Good afternoon and welcome to Who's Right. I'm Sandra McFadden, and today I have with me Rick Raulin. Hi Rick,
Hello, Sandra. How are you doing? Thank
Rick is running for County Supervisor.
Yes.
With the Dane County District 12.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here today. I am baffled by what your duties are at Dane County Supervisor.
You are in a large majority. We're kind of the middle child.
You're the middle child.
Well, everybody knows about the state and
Yes.
what goes on there, and everybody knows about the local government.
Right.
But there's a whole level of government, and it's a very large and very expensive level of government. The county board does a lot of different things. It approves, from a regulatory aspect, it approves things like zoning, land use issues that come up before the board. From a budgetary standpoint, it has a budget of over $500 million.
$500 million?
Yeah, so it's very large, and approximately
just in
Dane County, and approximately half of that is what's called pass-through money. It goes from the state through Dane County's hands to different services, or from the federal government through Dane County's hands for various services. A lot of the in fact, almost all of the social services are actually performed by Dane County. So services for elderly, for disabled, for those kinds of services are run from Dane County.
Services for all of the cities in Dane County.
Well, not quite all of them, but a lot of them. A tremendous amount of money comes through.
That budget, that $1 billion budget, goes
$500 million.
About
$500 million, about half of that, so about $250 million comes from the state or the federal government.
Okay.
As what's called pass-through money.
That's a lot of responsibility.
But the other $250 million, which is still not chump change, comes from the taxes, comes from property taxes, comes from sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
We have a 0.5% sales tax here in Dane County. Some of the viewers might remember that was passed about 20 years ago to build a jail. I just found out that we are on the verge of collecting our $700 millionth for that over the last 20 years. That would be for a jail that cost $25 million to build and has been built for about 10 years. So unfortunately, and we're still collecting. We're still collecting it. We've been collecting it.
How much has been collected for
almost, right now it's about $690 million. By the time the election hits, it'll be about $700 million.
So what happened to all that money?
It's in the general operating fund. It went to God knows where. One of the problems that we have...
Why didn't they at some point stop collecting when they reached the balance?
That was never part of the plan. Unfortunately, when a funding source comes into almost any governmental body, whether it's property taxes, sales taxes, you name it, the only thing that lasts forever is death and a tax. And the taxes just simply keep getting collected. And it's gone into the general fund for 20 years.
Well, is there any way to stop it?
There would be, but we'd have a tremendous budget hole if we did. So there's really not a legitimate way to stop it, but if we actually used it correctly, I wouldn't have a major problem with that. What happens with our budget, we don't know where our money goes for the most part. We don't audit programs very effectively. So we don't know if a program works or doesn't work. We don't know if it's got a population that still needs the program even. So unfortunately, we have a lot of circumstances where we don't know if we're spending our money wisely. And that leads to a lot of excessive spending. As we've seen for the last 10 years, we've had 10 years of property tax increases. When other communities in my own district, most of my district is Madison, but part of it's Maple Bluff. 2 years ago, when Dane County raised property taxes 7.9%, Maple Bluff raised them 1%. This year, Dane County raised property taxes 4.5%. That put us in the top 5 counties of the state of Wisconsin for property tax increases this year. Now, it's nice to be in a top 5 once in a while. That's not a top 5 we need to be in.
No, it's not.
No, it really isn't.
So, you're the incumbent.
No, I'm actually the challenger.
Oh, you're the challenger.
The incumbent's been there for 10 years, and during those 10 years, we have seen the debt. We actually have 2 budgets that the county deals with, like most governmental bodies. They have an operating budget and they have a capital budget. The purpose of a capital budget is to borrow for things that take a long time to pay for, like a building or something like that. And then the operating budget is kind of like your checkbook. So think of the capital budget as your mortgage and the operating budget as your checkbook. Unfortunately, when we don't have when this county has not been able to balance its checkbook, it just pulls out its mortgage and just throws more money on top of it. In the last 10 years, our budget, our capital debt has gone from about $60 million to right now between 240 and 250 million. That's a 300+% increase in 10 years. And that's unsustainable. Every single day in this county, it costs us $93,500 and change just for debt service. Every single day. Now that money could be going towards services that actually help people. That could be going towards a lot of things other than paying off debt. And
Well, I just have to ask you why we are so much in debt. Where did the debt come from? How did we get into this?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure that I have a very good answer for it, but I can tell you one thing. The current county board leadership and our previous county exec didn't understand the word no. Apparently had never heard the word no, and they just never saw a program they didn't like. And if they liked it, they spent money on it.
A program such as, name 5 programs.
Or it could be anything. Now, there's a lot of programs that we have little control over. For example, the pass-through money that I explained previously, about a half of the budget is pass-through money. So let's say there's a program for, I don't know, a program to help the elderly.
Yes.
If we were to cut that program, we may end up actually costing ourselves more money than what we save in the cuts, because by a reduction in certain programs, we also reduce the amount of money that the federal government might pay us to assist in that program, or that the state government. So we're really hamstrung in what we can or cannot do when it comes to programs. But one of the things that just drives me absolutely crazy is when the county board will do things of a budgetary nature that belong in an operating budget. A crazy example that happened this year. There was a snowmobile and a trailer that the Department of Natural Resources, State of Wisconsin, DNR, offered to Dane County. But Dane County had to pay for it, and then after they started using it, then they would get paid back by the state, by Dane County. What historically has happened with our board is we have all kinds of matching grants or moments like that where the county pays X for some product or service, whatever it happens to be, or for land. This happens a lot when the county purchases land. They will, let's say, buy $1 million worth of land, and $500,000 of that money comes from some other organization, so from the state, from the Audubon Society, or someplace. If you and I receive that kind of a grant, we would apply that grant money to pay the long-term debt that we just incurred.
Right.
What the county does is it throws it into the operating budget and just comes up with a new program to apply it to, or another way to spend it. And so our debt just keeps rising and rising unchecked.
No debt is ever paid off. No debt.
Well, we
is
have to,
ever
I mean,
paid.
we're obviously paying debt. We're paying $93,500, but we're not paying it off anywhere near as quickly as we could be.
I see. So if you were to get elected, what would you do? What would be the first thing that you would do?
Well, what I'm hearing at the
As-
doors, and that's very important to me. The communication is huge, because I don't have all the answers, and I never pretend to.
Right.
But I hear from a lot of people at doors. I've probably talked to 13 or 1,400 people since November at their door. And the most important thing to them is jobs and economic development. And we can grow a bigger pie by encouraging jobs to come into the community and encouraging economic development to come into Dane County. We don't do that by hiring more county workers. Not that
No.
hiring a county workers is
No,
necessarily a
but
bad thing,
it's just
but we
going-
encourage private industry
Right.
to hire. And one of the things that needs to happen in order for economic development to be successful is we need to have predictable economic development, we need to have reasonable economic development, and when we look at the regulations that exist, such as zoning or the application process, a company that's starting up or an entrepreneur that's got a great idea and they need to go through the licensing process, they need to know that it'll start at this date and it'll end at that date. These are the things you have to do. These things, they're not easy, but they're reasonable, and they don't change in midstream. They don't change during the process. If we had that kind of predictability and that reasonableness, we would have more business come here because, frankly, we're very attractive. Got a wonderful workforce.
Is it attractive to entrepreneurs to bring their business into Dane County?
It's attractive due to the workforce, due to the lifestyle that we have and the beauty that we have with the lakes and the environment. We've got a lot of wonderful positives here, but we shoot ourselves in the, that's the problem. The cost of regulation and the unpredictability of regulation. An example that's not a Dane County example, but a Madison example would be the Edgewater Hotel. The Edgewater Hotel is a prime case of what not to do when it comes to economic development. And whether you thought that the development of the Edgewater Hotel was a great idea or is a lousy idea, it doesn't really matter where you fall in that continuum. The problem was everything changed as they went along. One mayor said, yes, we'll do this. One city council said, yes, we'll do this. And then the next mayor said, no, we won't. And that's a problem. If I'm a business person, I can't think 6 months down the road, am I going to get a different politician? It's only going to screw up the works. I need to have predictability. And more importantly, when any regulation goes on the books, it ought to be reasonable and there ought to be an economic analysis. How does this impact the person who's got to actually follow these rules? If they generate a relatively small amount of benefit for the community or for the environment or whatever it happens to be, and it costs the property owner or the developer $500,000 or $100,000 to comply with them, they're not going to develop because they can't afford to. They need to be reasonable.
Right. So why should someone vote for you over another candidate? What are you going to do that someone else is not going to do?
Well, I've actually learned the word no. I have 4 kids of my own, and I had to teach them the word no. They're all adults, and frankly, when they were teenagers, thought I was an idiot. And they've gotten to their 20s now, and they realize Dad was not so dumb, and neither was Mom. We needed to say no when they were doing things that weren't all that bright. And I've got very smart kids, but they, just like everybody else's kids, do things that aren't all that bright.
Right.
As a politician, you need to be able to say no. Yes, it's a great idea. We simply cannot afford it. Another time, another place, maybe we can, but not now. We need to pay down our debt. The debt that exists, we need to make a concerted effort to pay it down. And one of the things that I mentioned previously is when we've got money that comes in, matching monies, that doesn't go into the operating budget. That goes to address the debt. Frankly, all that sales tax that we've been collecting, I'd like to earmark. Now, I'm not a big fan of earmarks, but I would like to earmark a percentage of that, probably as much as 20% of the sales tax, to directly address the debt, to go to knock down our debt. Because right now, our credit rating as a what's called our bond rating in Dane County is not AAA, and it's because we are so irresponsible in the way we spend and tax.
Interesting.
And we actually lost a bond rating, and we can't afford that because it costs us more money.
It's very interesting to listen to you and to understand where we are in our county, and it's really an eye-opener, I'll tell you.
Thank you very much.
I'm jolted out of my seat here by
I was too when I looked at it myself.
Going on, but I've learned a lot, and I know our audience will too, and we really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for asking.
Yes.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Wonderful. And thank you for watching today, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.